All right, staying in Washington, House Speaker Mike Johnson and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met at the Capitol today. The leaders reaffirmed the U.S.-Israeli relationship. Take a listen to that.
That I'm impressed with your leadership, with your initiative, and for me, most of all, your friendship to the State of Israel, the Jewish people, the Jewish state. The American-Israeli alliance has never been stronger. I'm now completing a week in which began with an extraordinary meeting with President Trump. And under his leadership, the critical decisions that show his commitment and the American people's commitment to Israel have come to the fore instantly. First, he renewed immediately the supply of weapons that had been stopped, which we need as we're fighting for our future, for our existence, and for the broader Middle East in a seven-front war. He immediately released those weapons. He issued yesterday these sanctions on this scandalous and corrupt organization, the ICC, that threatens the right of all democracies to defend themselves by themselves. And he's done so many things in the interim, just in 2 weeks. But I was deeply moved by the reception that we got, the substantive things that we discussed, making sure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon, and also making sure that Hamas is destroyed. We're not going to have a future for Gaza or for a future for peace in our part of the world if Hamas remains there. We agreed on many things, but I think it sets the tone for this great strengthening of the American-Israeli alliance. It's not only an alliance between governments, it's an alliance between peoples. This is the house of the people. And you, Mr. Speaker, represent the American people that overwhelmingly support the State of Israel. You know, I was driving through Washington. I look outside. There are people on the sidewalks. They see, the limousines pass, and they all go like this. They all go like this. They all support. And I think, Mr. Speaker, that's the spirit that animates you and so many of your colleagues here. And I want to thank you again. And I want to say, you're invited to Israel this year in Jerusalem. I know you're busy, but find space to do that.
I can't wait.
You'll be welcome on the red carpet.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And the two men did not take any questions from reporters, but CBS News congressional correspondent Nikole Killion has the very latest from Washington. She's been keeping an eye on all this for us. Nikole, thank you for being with us. What did we learn from that press conference? What were the big headlines to come out of that?
Well, the main headline, obviously no questions were taken, but really this was an opportunity to just reaffirm, as you hear the Prime Minister say there, but also the Speaker acknowledged as much, the strong U.S.-Israeli partnership. In fact, Speaker Johnson called Prime Minister Netanyahu a good friend, said that he has been in touch with him often, talked about aid that Congress has passed in support of Israel and to assist Israel. Both leaders also talked about President Trump and his leadership with respect to recently helping to secure that ceasefire deal, which was done in tandem with the Biden administration. So the Speaker saying, this is kind of what decisive leadership looks like. However, he did not touch on the more provocative statement that we heard from the president earlier this week about potentially a U.S. takeover of Gaza. Neither leaders really referenced that particular controversy, but really was a more cordial exchange, again, to reaffirm the significance and importance of the U.S.-Israeli friendship.
And Nikole, this morning, Speaker Johnson also said that details on a new budget resolution could be released soon to help advance the president's agenda. The Senate's also working on their own package. Are they on the same page here?
Well, they are and they aren't. Look, both chambers, which are led by Republicans, of course, realize the need to kind of get a jump start on the president's agenda. But they are appearing to take different approaches. Earlier this week, we heard from South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, who said that the Senate, as soon as next week, was going to introduce their own budget resolution. He is advocating for a more targeted approach, really focusing on defense, as well as border security and energy, to the tune of $150 billion or more, something that he believes should be paid for, whereas House Republicans, we know, spent a good chunk of their day yesterday at the White House meeting with President Trump for several hours. They are also kind of working on their own legislative package, although in the House, the preference is more to do a larger bill, one that could potentially encompass extending the president's tax cuts. The speaker even today said it's possible it may deal with the debt limit, which can sometimes be a prickly issue for both sides of the aisle. So the speaker indicating, at least on the House side, their plan should be ready as well, potentially, or at least the outlines of it, as soon as next week.
And Nikole, the Senate also just confirmed Russell Vought as the White House budget director. Some critics consider him the architect of Project 2025, which is a hard-right blueprint for government reform. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer called his confirmation, quote, a triple header of disaster for hardworking Americans. How is policy expected to change with him leading the White House Office of Management and Budget?
Well, certainly from the standpoint of Senate Democrats, they remain gravely concerned, which is why they held the Senate floor ahead of that final confirmation vote last night, holding speeches for the better part of 30 hours to protest his nomination. I mean, look, because of the perceived ties with Project 2025, they believe that he is just going to kind of execute on that playbook. And even, just last week when we saw some of the confusion over that federal funding freeze, or whether we're talking about some of the upheaval within the federal workforce, they believe that that is something that he will just kind of double down on now that he is in this new role.
And Nikole, also next week, the Senate is going to officially vote whether to confirm two of Trump's most embattled cabinet picks. We're talking about Tulsi Gabbard for Director of National Intelligence and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for Secretary of Health and Human Services. What's the status on them? Are they going to pass?
Well, I think in terms of Senate Republicans and their posture, and certainly the White House, they're feeling pretty optimistic about their chances, particularly since their nominations passed out of committee, which is typically a good sign and prospect for passage. But it really is going to hinge on whether Republicans remain unified, because it's more than likely the Democrats will, similar to Russ Vought, maybe also similarly oppose these two nominations and could potentially hold the floor in a way that we saw them do with the Russ Vought nomination this week. So that being said, again, as long as Republicans stick together, both of these nominees should have the votes to pass.
All right, Nikole Killion, thanks so much.